That concludes our questions for oral answer. I call on Government Order of the Day number 1.
Crown Minerals, Permitting and Crown Land Bill, committee stage continued.
I declare the House in committee for further consideration of the Crown Minerals, Permitting and Crown Lands Bill.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Chairman.
The House is in committee. Kia ora tātou no reira te whare, inga iwi, inga rio, inga hawe wha, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Honourable members, the House is in committee in consideration of the Crown Minerals, Permitting and Crown Land Bill. And when the bill was last being considered last evening, as I was in the chair here, we were debating part 2, and the Honourable Member Moana Maki, there she is, had the call with 4 minutes remaining. I call the Honourable Member Moana Maki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Part 2 of the Crown Minerals Amendment Bill, of course, deals with the Conservation Act, which is very pertinent on Love Doc Day, on a day that we, on this side of the House, are showing our support for the work the Department of Conservation does. And we want to say to all the staff of the Department of Conservation that even if the national government doesn't appreciate what they do, we certainly do. So it's very, very timely. Well, you might consider, the National Party might say that they do, but then they cut the funding, which clearly shows that it's all lip service. But coming back to the Conservation Act, the changes being made under the Conservation Act are typical of the problems right through this piece of legislation, which is that there are some very good things in this legislation. There are some very positive changes that are being made. But it's always one step forward, 2 steps back with the National Party. So while under Part 2 of this legislation, we're very pleased to see the automatic inclusion of reserve land.
Order. There's far too much background noise going on. It's totally discourteous to the Honourable Member trying to address the business of the House. Please be considerate of others. Call the Honourable Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as I was saying, with the National Party, it's always 1 step forward, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps backwards. And whilst in Part 2 of this bill, we're very pleased to see that new reserve land will be automatically included into Schedule 4, what is more disappointing is once again the dilution of the powers of the Minister of Conservation, because under the changes to Part 2, whereas it used to be the preserve of the Minister of Conservation to decide on status of land, now that is going to be taken away from the Minister of Conservation and handed to Cabinet by order in Council. So we've seen right through this piece of legislation a weakening of the role of the Minister of Conservation. And it's important to remind members that the Minister of Conservation is the Minister who is responsible for the stewardship of the DOC estate on behalf of all New Zealanders. That is their mandate. So we've seen in Part 1 of this bill that now where there is an application for a mining activity to be carried out on DOC land. It used to be the Minister of Conservation that weighed up what the impact would be on DOC land and made that decision in the best interest of the preservation of that land for all New Zealanders. Well, now half of that responsibility has gone to the Minister of Energy. So the Minister of Energy, who clearly has a vested interest in seeing those projects go ahead, now has half the decision-making power, and that is entirely inappropriate. And it's not just inappropriate, it is an absolute boom for lawyers, because this is going to result in judicial review after judicial review after judicial review. Because when you see the Minister of Energy out there constantly promoting mining, making it quite clear that they want projects to go ahead, going to the opening of company offices, doing all the things that a Minister of Energy does, and there's nothing wrong with a Minister of Energy doing those things, that's their role. But then to say that they're unbiased or haven't predetermined their choice when it comes to actually making a decision about a concession on DOC land, I don't think that that is going to be feasible, and it's going to result in people who are unhappy with the decision taking a judicial review saying that a proper process wasn't followed because the Minister of Energy had made up their mind all along. So the simple thing to do would be to leave things as they are and leave it to the Minister of Conservation, because that's where it is appropriate. As I said, we're pleased to see the automatic inclusion of reserve land into Schedule 4, but very disappointed to see that despite the fact that the government has claimed to have backed down on mining in Schedule 4 land, that we're already seeing more of this exploratory work being done. It's like the Japanese with whaling, you know, this is just scientific research, nothing to see here, we just want to see what's there. Well, the only reason you'd want to see what's there, and it's private companies that are doing this, not the government, the only reason those private companies would want to see what's there is if at some point the government has said to them, you know what, yes, we are going to let you exploit those resources sometime in the future.